My name is Betty. I've been working in an office at a small company since I graduated from college. I've always been rather plain looking, which didn't make me very popular with guys, resulting in few romantic opportunities. Before I knew it, I was in my 30s without a boyfriend. Feeling lonely and worried about never getting married, I decided to take a leap of faith and signed up for a dating app. That's how I met and married my husband, Daniel. Daniel is 2 years younger than me at 28. Handsome and tall, he works in sales at a well-known company and is honestly way out of my league. Daniel is a kind-hearted man. He insisted that the bride should be the star of the wedding and let me have our ceremony in my hometown. Since my hometown is in the countryside, most of Daniel's friends couldn't attend, so he invited only a few close ones. Daniel told me, if Betty's happy, that's good enough for me, and encouraged me to invite a lot of my friends to the celebration. Little did I know who Daniel really was, but I felt blessed being surrounded by many friends at our wedding. That's when the shocking event happened. One day, I came home from work to find Daniel playing video games. I assumed he got off work early and started preparing dinner. As I nearly sliced my finger, he dropped a bombshell. He had quit his job. "You quit without discussing it with me?" I asked, astonished. "There's nothing to discuss for adults. I can make my own career decisions," he replied nonchalantly. "Sure, adults can make their own decisions, but aren't you supposed to consult your spouse before making such a significant life change?" Shocked by the sudden news, I felt we needed a serious talk. Without taking his eyes off the game, Daniel answered my questions. "Why did you quit your job? Did something bad happen?" I asked. "My boss was incompetent. I think there's a better place for me out there," he said. "A better place? Like where?" I pressed. "I'll figure that out." "Man, you're so annoying. Marrying an older woman is like being with my mom," he retorted. This wasn't the first time Daniel had mentioned my age. Each time, I would counter, "Then why did you marry me?" He would casually reply, "Because a complicated woman like Betty needs a stable guy like me," which would always spark an argument. This time, I chose not to retort. The main issue at hand was our future lifestyle. It was clear that with Daniel quitting his job, we couldn't maintain our current way of life. "Daniel, we're also sending money to your parents. Remember, their rent is high, and if you're not working, there's no way my income alone can support both households." This had become a concern shortly after Daniel and I got married. Both of Daniel's parents, still in their 50s, had quit their jobs, claiming, "Our backs and shoulders hurt. We can't keep working this hard if we want to live a long life." That was their choice, and while it may sound cold, I thought they should live their lives as they please, so I didn't say anything. The situation changed the month after they quit their jobs. They came to our apartment asking for financial assistance. "Oh, we don't have much in savings. If your parents are struggling, it'll be a problem for you too, Daniel," I said. So, we were convinced, and Daniel decided we would help with their rent and living expenses. They lived in a high-security, 4-bedroom apartment close to the station, and the rent was through the roof. After they left, cheerful about the financial help, I asked Daniel, "What about our own living expenses?" "Betty can cover our costs. I'm going to give my salary to Mom and Dad," he said. I wasn't happy. The thought of divorce crossed my mind. "You should consider yourself lucky, a woman over 30 marrying a younger handsome guy like me. You're already winning." That's what he always said, making me feel worthless, so I couldn't muster the courage to leave him. If Daniel quit his job, sending money to his parents would be difficult. When I asked about this, he was too engrossed in his video game to pay any attention. "Hey, what about the money for David and Catherine?" Chopping carrots vigorously, I questioned him. Daniel clicked his tongue. "Obviously, Betty will cover that. We're a couple. We're supposed to support each other. Until I find a suitable job, Betty will hold the fort." He went back to his game. I don't make a lot of money, and I was anxious about what the future held. But there was nothing I could do. Life slowly changed. We started draining our savings to help his parents. Daniel, although jobless, did nothing around the house. When I complained, he would say, "I should have never married an older woman. You're all so natty. You don't appreciate having a husband like me." As for his parents, they started complaining about the insufficient amount we were sending. "So, Betty, you're this age and not making much money? Have you been slacking off?" "Well, since Daniel used to be the one supporting you, it's high time you step up," they admonished me. I started doing some freelance illustrator work after my regular job just to bring in more money. Daniel, meanwhile, showed zero interest in looking for a job he considered suitable for himself. My love for Daniel, who spends his days playing video games at home or asking me for money to go to the casino, was running thin. When should we get a divorce? I wondered, thinking about when to divorce, yet what if the rest of my life is just me, all alone, kept me from taking the plunge. Then one day, after work, I was greeted by a stranger while I was in the supermarket. Who are you? You don't remember me, do you? We met at the wedding. I was friends with Daniel. I'm John. Taking a closer look at John's cheerful face, I couldn't help but exclaim, "Oh, John, you were one of the few friends Daniel invited to our wedding." Apparently just off work like me, John, in his suit, was filling his shopping cart with plenty of groceries. "I'm sorry I didn't recognize you. My husband has spoken highly of you." "Well, the thing is, I've actually cut ties with Daniel. I saw you and wondered if you're doing okay, so I thought I'd say hi." I was surprised to hear John speak of his friendship with Daniel in the past tense. I never thought he had actually severed ties. John then proceeded to explain to my astonished self that the reason Daniel held our wedding in my hometown wasn't out of kindness. The truth was, Daniel had very few friends. Apparently, Daniel spent most of his student life on slot machines and had a habit of borrowing money without paying it back. John was one of Daniel's college friends, and he was no exception. He had lent Daniel money but never got repaid. The reason he continued the friendship was because they worked at the same company and John didn't want to rock the boat. Once Daniel quit his job, he immediately reached out to John for more money. That was the last straw for John. He cut off all contact. Do you know why Daniel was forced to quit his job? Forced to quit? I heard he left because he didn't get along with his boss. That's not it. Daniel was fired because they found out he was going to casinos when he was supposed to be on sales calls. I was shocked. This man, Daniel, had been lying to me since the beginning of our marriage. I felt as if the spell that made me believe women over 30 are worthless had finally broken. The feeling of I can't forgive him washed over me like a wave. I thanked John in a trembling voice for telling me the truth and said goodbye. A few days later, I spoke up to Daniel. "Daniel, I quit my job." Daniel, finally pausing his video game, looked utterly shocked. I put my mobile phone on the table, its screen displaying my banking app. "I have pretty much run out of savings since I have been sending money to David and Catherine. We have been bleeding cash. You have also been taking money from me for casinos and games. We're out of money." Daniel let out a voice of despair, saying, "What? What the heck is this?" Given that our savings had dwindled down to almost nothing, his despair was understandable. "What are we going to do now? How are we supposed to live if you quit your job when we're already low on money?" "That's not my problem. Speaking of which, I have loans I need to pay back. Could you maybe find a job quickly, Daniel? I want to take some time off and relax at home. Isn't it normal for spouses to support each other? It's hard for me to work now that I'm over 30, so now it's Daniel's turn to support me." Daniel, in disbelief, immediately called his parents. As soon as I told his parents about our situation, they showed up at our house. They began to berate us for not having money, searching the house suspecting we must have hidden it somewhere, but there was no money to be found. "What was this large withdrawal?" they questioned. "That money was used to pay back debts," I answered accurately. That money was used to pay back a loan Daniel had taken from a friend. My own savings weren't enough, so I had to take out another loan to repay Daniel's friend. "Who did you pay back, and why would you even bother paying back a loan now of all times?" "I only paid it back because I heard from John that Daniel had a lot of debt. I think it was the right thing to do." Daniel was the first to start yelling, "Let's divorce." As I calmly explained myself, even my parents-in-law agreed with Daniel. They forced me into their car and took me to the courthouse where I had to file for divorce on the spot. "Glad I won't have to see your broke old face anymore," Daniel said before leaving. I immediately headed to a cafe where John was already waiting. "John, sorry for the trouble. I was able to file for divorce successfully." "Oh good, I was worried, so it's a relief?" Actually, Daniel was the one who told me he wanted a divorce, but this was all a plan between John and me. Simply saying I wanted a divorce would have led to Daniel and his parents making a fuss, as they wouldn't want to let go of their cash cow. I figured the quickest way to sever ties with Daniel and his parents was to prove I had no value as their financial source. Fortunately, my side job as an illustrator had started to pay off, and I had saved quite a bit. I had this money deposited into a bank account that I kept hidden from Daniel and his parents. It's true that I repaid the money Daniel had borrowed from John. but I had actually given John more money than that amount. It was all part of the plan to lower my bank balance, and John was more than happy to go along with it. After successfully filing for divorce, John met me at the cafe to return the extra money. However, the envelope he handed me contained all the money I had given him. "John, this is too much. The money Daniel borrowed belongs to you, doesn't it?" "No, I only lent money to Daniel, not to you. When I gave Daniel the money, I had no intention of getting it back. I cut ties with him because I didn't like his attitude afterwards. So this is all your money. Having a bit more cash can't hurt when you're rebuilding your life." I could only feel gratitude toward John, who said this with a smile. He had opened my eyes to Daniel's true nature and had been part of my plan to divorce. I tried to give him some money as a token of my gratitude, but he only accepted enough to cover his coffee at the cafe. After meeting John, I stopped by my former workplace. I had left my hidden bank account card with the CEO for safekeeping. Though my boss understood my situation and regretted my departure, I had no choice but to quit since Daniel knew where I worked and could potentially cause trouble later. "It's been tough, but I wish you all the happiness in the world," he said as my coworkers gifted me a beautiful dress and shoes. Thrown out of my home in just a t-shirt, jeans, and sandals, they had gone shopping for me at a nearby store. "It's a gift. I hope you find happiness moving forward." Leaving my wonderful colleagues was hard, but I felt blessed to have worked in such a supportive environment. I decided to go back to my parents' house. When I was dragged to court from the home I had shared with Daniel, I had packed my work supplies and valuables in a bag so I could immediately start working as a freelance illustrator. Thankfully, my freelance work kept me financially stable. Daniel and his family, on the other hand, weren't so lucky. They couldn't pay the rent for the house they lived in and were evicted. They moved into the house Daniel and I used to share, but they lost that one too when they couldn't pay the rent. Daniel desperately started looking for a new job, but his gap in employment and homelessness made it difficult for him to find one. Currently, it seems they're living in a makeshift shack by a river near their old house. I know this because Daniel reached out to me once. When I answered the call from a public phone, Daniel was crying and told me how sorry he was. "I have realized I can't live without you, Betty. Can we please start over? You regretted marrying an older woman, didn't you? I'm done being your cash cow. Goodbye." After that call, I never answered another from a public phone. The parents' house is quite a distance away from where Daniel is located in the countryside. Daniel, who doesn't have much money, probably can't afford to make the trip all the way here. The lesson I've learned from my failed marriage is that there's no rush to get married, whether you're 30 or 50. Living the way you want to is what truly matters. For making me realize that, I guess I owe Daniel a tiny bit of thanks.